In my opinion, The Outlast Trials is going to be huge. It's based on a massively popular horror series, is great fun to play with your friends, and has huge potential for expansion. There are even some live service elements sprinkled in to make progression satisfying enough to keep you on the grind. Oh, and one more thing. It's very, very scary. The Outlast Trials has been in early access on Steam for nearly a year, but most recently exited the early access period and released on consoles. My review was conducted on the Xbox Series X, and I would have reviewed it on PC as well, if not for my issue with being a student, and therefore in a constant state of being broke. The Outlast Trials is a multiplayer continuation of the Outlast series, a hugely popular single-player horror series that quickly became a must-play for horror game fans after the original release in 2014. Saying that though, I never would have thought that the Outlast Trials work as well as it does. You'll work your way through soul-like trials as a random so-called patient, solving some seriously gruesome puzzles and becoming more and more desensitized to having your hand inside chest cavities. It's a multiplayer game and does feature matchmaking, but I'd heavily recommend playing with a few mates, as nothing makes you feel more relaxed after a long day at work than hiding in a cupboard as a clown with a drill for a hand hunts you down. Lots of reviews of the Outlast Trials have raised questions about the fear factor of this game, but I'm here to assure you that it absolutely is scary. Sure, having friends around meant that we laughed more than you're probably supposed to in a horror game, but my heart was pounding the entire time nonetheless. So what makes the Outlast Trials so scary? Let's kick this review off with a close look at the gameplay so that we can see what really makes the Outlast Trials tick. Have you ever seen the Saw movies? Well, imagine a game based on those movies. And no, I'm not talking about the old Xbox Saw games, I mean a good game. Sprinkle it with a hint of Satanism and creepy sex horror, and then add multiplayer. You have yourself a lovely, definitely not safe for work cocktail named the Outlast Trials. There is a story to unravel during the Outlast Trials, and it all begins with you being taken off the streets and forced to undergo clearly unethical and slightly Freudian government tests. I'm not entirely sure why the government has such a fascination with both nuns and children, but that's Outlast for you. You'll arrive at the facility, and after having night vision forcibly installed into your skull, although at least it's a second-hand one, so no wastage folks, you'll be led through a solo tutorial trial. It's here you'll meet most of the enemies the Outlast Trials has to offer, namely Mother Gooseberry, who's either a very bizarre asset flipper Pennywise, or an even stranger crossover with the TV show BoJack Horseman. You'll discover most of the main mechanics of the game while on a mission to destroy your past life, witnessing each stage of your life before incinerating your public records and your private interactions. It's all very Outlast, and involves a lot of creepy religious imagery, something Outlast has had a fascination with since the original, but really delved into in the second entry. On the mechanic side of things, there's a lot here, none of it particularly new, but all of it very effective. As is Outlast tradition, you won't be able to fight back at all here, just run and hide, and the Outlast Trials gives you every tool you need in order to accomplish this effectively. I particularly like the lean mechanic, which, if pressed when sprinting, allows you to look behind you while being chased. Just don't do this in a tight space. Nothing quite cuts a chase short than adding a nice head-shaped dent into the nearest wall because you've looked behind you while the machete man is chasing you and run straight into the door frame. There's definitely a heightened sense of mobility here than in previous Outlast games. Your parkour skills are improved, and you're able to run and hide noticeably more efficiently. One problem with all these techniques is they do make a lot of noise, and that's something you want to avoid in this game. Nothing summons Dear Mother Murderous Clown faster than legging it down a corridor, bouncing your head off dangling cans as you go. Oh, and there are a lot of those. Sound traps exist in every part of the trials of the Outlast Trials. And speaking of trials, I'll get to exactly what they are in a moment, with a quick second ad break, sponsored by yours truly. The Outlast Trials is a game with a lot to progress through, and I'd love to have the time to play through every part of it before I review it, but unfortunately I'm a student in my third year, so I just don't have the time. That's why I've decided to review the Outlast Trials in two parts. That's why all I ask from you guys today is to consider subscribing. I love making these videos, and a subscription allows me to continue making them and to review more and more full-priced games. The next part will be coming in a couple of weeks, but don't worry, there is a video releasing next week. You just need to vote on what that video will be. Head over to the poll in the description so you can vote. I'll be announcing the winner on Saturday, so enable notifications so you can see when that video goes live, and check my community page for the announcement. Thank you guys so much for your time. Now back to the video. So, the trials and the Outlast Trials. Once you've completed the tutorial at the beginning of the game and sufficiently erased your own identity, you can begin with what the Outlast Trials calls therapy. Personally, I've got no idea what being gassed repeatedly, having my hand drilled in by a sock puppet that sounds suspiciously like Krusty the Clown from The Simpsons, and being shocked by a singing police officer have to do with finding herself, but who am I to judge each person's healing journey? Each trial will have you and ideally a group of your friends heading into one of the small handful of maps to complete a mission, which is explained to you by a man on a TV screen who definitely isn't trying to copy Jigsaw. There is matchmaking in the Outlast Trials, but I'd recommend playing with friends because it really does improve the experience. There's also the option to play solo, which takes some of the laughing fear factor out of the Outlast Trials and turns it into something a lot scarier. You'll head into the trial with your friends and be guided through a series of missions which include objectives that provide fun for all the family, including but not limited to chopping a naked man's legs off, making a delicious bleach and body part soup for orphans, rolling a prisoner through a prison so you can turn him into bits of burger left on the barbecue, rummaging through a corpse to find a key just like you rummage through your sock drawer to find your favourite socks, and much more. I'm not going to show you all these things now because they might get me demonetized, but it's strangely more fun than it sounds. And if these phenomenally pleasant activities weren't enough, then don't worry, because you'll do them while being chased by a number of professionally trained therapists who just can't wait to get to know you up close and personal. These therapists include Mother Gooseberry, sock puppet loving dental experts, Officer Coyle, the friendliest police officer you'll ever meet. He even sings songs to you during therapy. Machete Guy, who just can't wait to give you a hug, but it's just a shame that he doesn't put the machete down first, and a Titan from Attack on Titan. If all that wasn't enough, don't worry, there's more. There's a lady who will jump out from hiding spots and try and bite you, and of course she's completely naked. There's a couple of other minor ones, but the last major enemy is the Pusher. Now it might sound a bit self-explanatory, but the Pusher is a little pushy with his love of recreational drugs. If you come across him, he'll gas you, and that's where one of the most interesting mechanics of the Outlast Trials begins. Once you've been gassed sufficiently, which can happen if you trigger traps that reside inside containers, above doors, or the Pusher himself, you'll fall into a state of psychosis. Psychosis will have you sprinting away from this very scary looking bloke who sort of looks like Pinhead from Hellraiser, only wearing slightly less BDSM-y clothes. He'll chase you until either you outlast him or you find an antidote, which is marked on your HUD when you enter the psychosis state. It's a really excellent mechanic that adds that little spice of panic that's sometimes missing from the hide and seek like gameplay of the regular game. There's one more mechanic that ties up the Outlast Trials in a nice gory bow, and that's everyone's favourite lunchtime activity, betrayal. As I explained in a short I released yesterday, go and check that one out if you haven't already, every now and then a clone of one of you or your friend's characters will spawn. That NPC will act like you, look like you, and then just in a game of Helldivers 2, kill one of your friends like you. There are only small differences that separate them from you, and that's the slightly incorrect game attacks above their heads and the gigantic knives they happen to be carrying. Don't worry, they're not that hard to spot, but they do scare the living daylights out of you each and every time anyway. It's here where I have to give huge credit to the team at Red Barrels for their brilliant AI work. They may be incredibly irritating, but the enemies you face off against are fantastically animated and occasionally even manage to outsmart you in chase sequences. This is no commoner garden AI, let me tell you. So that's what you're up against in the Outlast Trials, but what else could you be up against besides the enemies? Let's do a quick little section on technical performance. The answer to my question of what else could you be up against is a short one, surprisingly little. This is a game that's been in early access for almost a year, and before that was in development for a while. Like, I think at least 4 MCU movies flopped while this game was in development, so it's a very complete package. There are so few flame drops that I barely noticed them at all, and bugs wise, there are only a couple of very minor things. The Outlast Trials performs beautifully and looks good, well, awful but good while doing it. No complaints at all here. So let's move on to our two final parts of this review, concerns and the conclusion. By the way, if you've reached this point in the video, comment and tell me if you've played the Outlast Trials or not. Oh, and subscribe. I know that this review has been fairly glowing so far, but I do have a couple of concerns about the Outlast Trials. Number one is longevity. From what I've played so far, the Outlast Trials has truly gained my attention. It's brutal, gory, scary as hell. On top of all of that, it's actually fun. Saying all that, I'm concerned that since all the trials are functionally very similar, this gameplay loop will get stale further down the line. Of course, whether that's true or not will entirely depend on the second part of my review, so hold your horses for that. I'm also slightly worried about enemy variety. There are only so many encounters with Policeman Pikachu and your hygienist that you can cope with after all. Sooner or later, the same crop of enemies will become dull, and where does the game go from there? How does it continue to stay interesting and entice you to come back for more? Find out in a couple of weeks. Overall, I came away from the Outlast Trials impressed. This is a game that gathered up a load of concepts I never thought was designed to go together, bundled them into a bag, and chucked them down the stairs until they somehow mashed and smashed together into something possibly even greater than the sum of its parts. There's some serious opportunity to grow here, and I think that the Outlast Trials, if it manages to simply provide more of the same with minor variations, is onto a winning formula. I had a fab time with this game, and at this current stage of the review process, would highly recommend you all pick it up and give it a try for yourself. It's 30 quid, which is what, 3 pints in today's economy? Get yourself out of the pubs and into your living rooms to begin your own personal journey of growth in the Outlast Trials. It's not the gentlest form of therapy out there, but you'll have an absolutely cracking time with it. Comment down below to let me know if you enjoyed the review. Remember to fill in the form to vote, smash the subscribe button, and I'll see you all next week.